Okay. Let me get things straight here. We're trying. We're trying, Mikkel. I mean, we're doing. It's just a matter of how is the doing going? And the doing is going. It's going. JWP, what's going on? It's good to see you. Man, what a week. What a week. What a wild week. All right, so we are going back in to spells and sorcery. And this time, a little bit of a different angle. Not too different, but a little bit of a different angle. So we're going to go into some of the history of magic. We're going to go into a very brief Hebrew word study on sorcery. And then I also found something pretty interesting in the Jewish Encyclopedia regarding witchcraft. So we're going to touch on some of that as well. First, real quick, let me get a link to the Discord if you're watching the recording later and you want to get in the Discord, which is where most of the actual talking happens. Then there will be a link pinned in the live chat. There will also be one pinned in the regular chat where you can join. It's obviously free and easy to get into. If you've never used Discord before, just understand most of us did not, and we were able to figure it out. So I'm sure you can figure it out too. There's also a tutorial, and there are about 1 million tutorials on how to use Discord on YouTube. So if you need help, then there is plenty of help out there. Beyond that, sorry, I'm just trying to get things together here. Man, I raced home to get this rolling. Beyond that, we do a Bible study every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Central Time. Right now, we're in 2 Corinthians. That's been really good. Really good. If you care to go back, you can go into my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Theist. You can click on the live button, and then you can go back to 1 Corinthians and watch through 1 Corinthians. If you've never done a deep dive on the Corinthian epistles, I highly recommend checking that out because, I mean, they're my favorite, so I'm very, very biased, but I think they're paramount in all of Scripture, understanding what the Corinthian epistles were about. And I think more so than ever, because culture is beginning to parallel what was kind of happening in Corinth with that church. I personally feel as if we're kind of reenacting that in the modern day. The Discord, this is what you'd be looking at if you decided to join. There is basically a section for everything. Most just conversation happens in off topic. There's also theology, culture, news, conspiracy, Bible, library, which is just I mean, like reading suggestions, things like that. The VIP is, if you care to donate, go for it. You don't need it. It's not at all necessary to be a part of the Discord to do that. Everything that matters really is free. So don't worry about that if you are not interested. There's also like a men's group that's getting a little bit of movement, and a women's group. I don't obviously have access to the women's group because I'm not a woman, even though nowadays you can kind of just decide. I choose to remain a man. And now this just got demonetized. But moving on. So the history of magic. Mesopotamia. There's a lot. Man, there's a lot. And this is one of those things where like I want to go into the real deep rabbit hole, but I won't. But just understand a lot of Christianity, a lot of Christian history, a lot of Jewish history, so much of it, including our creation story, in my opinion. And I have the opinion because of historical documents and archaeology. It comes from Mesopotamia. At least parallels a lot of what happened around that area. I'm trying real hard to not go down a rabbit hole. Just understand, Mesopotamia, if you're a Christian, is something you should care about. You should care about the culture. You should care about what they cared about, because as a Christian, as the fulfillment of the Jewish faith, therefore including Jewish, you should care, because it's very important to understand Mesopotamian culture and history if you actually really want to understand Christian and Jewish history. But anyways, magic was invoked in many kinds of rituals and medicinal formulae, and to counteract evil omens. Defensive or legitimate magic in Mesopotamia were incarnations and ritual practices intended to alter specific realities. That's a key term there, to alter specific realities. Give me 1 second. I need to zoom in because I am blind. Much better. Much better. The ancient Mesopotamians believed that magic was the only viable defense against demons, ghosts, and evil sorcerers, to defend themselves against the spirits of those they had wronged. They would leave offerings known as kitspu in the person's tomb in hope of appeasing them. If that failed, they also sometimes took a figurine of the deceased and buried it in the ground, demanding for the gods to eradicate the spirit or force it to leave the person alone. So there's a little background right there. I've got more, but I want to make sure. Okay, nobody's saying I have anything messed up. Tell me if something's messed up as soon as you can. Like if I'm covering the screen with something, or if I fail to put the Bible up like I did on Sunday. Sorry about that. But I rely on you guys to make sure I'm not jacking things up. This is why I have you guys. I need you guys. Danny, good to see you. Ghost. Kat is going to bring you and I together so that we can have a brief discussion about something that you and her were talking about. So just understand you are not alone. And that's not just in reference to me or to Kat. It's in reference to many, the masses, one might say. You are not alone in what the two of you were talking about. Yes, alter specific realities, Mikkel. Very important. It's very important. All right, the ancient Mesopotamians also used magic, intending to protect themselves from evil sorcerers who might place curses on them. Black magic, as a category, did not exist in ancient Mesopotamia. And a person legitimately using magic to defend themselves against illegitimate magic would use exactly the same techniques. The only major difference was the fact that curses were enacted in secret, whereas a defense against sorcery was conducted in the open, in public, in front of an audience if possible. One ritual to punish a sorcerer was known as maklu. No idea if I'm saying that right, but that's what it looks like to me. Or the burning. So maklu, or the burning, was a ritual to punish sorcerers. That's what they called it. The person viewed as being afflicted by witchcraft would create an effigy of the sorcerer and put it on trial at night. Then, once the nature of the sorcerer's crimes had been determined, the person would burn the effigy and thereby break the sorcerer's power over them. The ancient Mesopotamians also performed magical rituals to purify themselves of sins committed unknowingly. Unknowing sin, which we'll wait. But think about, so unknowing sin. I'm gonna read it again because I want you to kind of relate this to Christianity. Mesopotamians also performed magic rituals to purify themselves of sins committed unknowingly. What does that say theologically about the Mesopotamians? It says that they had some kind of theological belief that, one, sin was a thing, but two, that you could commit sins unknowingly, meaning unintentionally, meaning not necessarily the result of an ill-willed heart, which is something that's talked about in Christianity, right? You have intentional sin, and then you have what people call unintentional sin. The idea is that as you grow in your Christian faith, you get to a place where the only sins you commit are unintentional sins. Things you're not paying attention, you're in a bad emotional place, low emotional intelligence, whatever the circumstance or situation might be, you commit these sins unknowingly, unwittingly, not on purpose. So the Mesopotamians had a way of dealing with that as well. They did rituals to purify themselves when they did that. One such ritual was known as supru, or burning, in which the caster of the spell would transfer the guilt for all their misdeeds into various objects, such as a strip of dates, an onion, or a tuft of wool. I love that word, tuft. It's such an odd word. Tuft of wool. The person would then burn the objects and thereby purify themselves of all sins that they might have unknowingly committed, A whole genre of love spells also existed. Such spells were believed to cause a person to fall in love with another person, restore love which had faded, or cause a male sexual partner to be able to sustain an let me figure out how to be YouTube friendly. Or would cause a male sexual partner to be able to sustain a ready to go, sustain an erection. All right, we're all adults. We're gonna be okay. When he had previously been unable to. So these were all love spells. I'm gonna read it again. So they had spells that were believed to cause a person to either fall in love with another person, restore love which had faded, or cause a male to be able to sustain sexual function. There we go. That's the YouTube friendly way. Sustain sexual function when he had previously been unable to. What a nice spell. Nowadays, you got to take a blue pill. Other spells were used to reconcile a man with his patron deity, or to reconcile a wife with a husband who had been neglecting her. Interesting stuff. The ancient Mesopotamians made no distinction between rational science and magic, which is, let's be real, that's most of the ancient world. And that relates also just to religion, right? Much of early religion was, at least in part, an attempt to understand the natural world, and an attempt to understand things that they could not currently understand. They didn't really know what was going on. Then you get into a lot of the arguments of well, maybe they did, and we don't know what's going on. That maybe the ancient world had actually a much better realistic, rational, scientific view and ability to engage with the natural world in ways that were highly technological, just not in the sense that we think about that word today. But that's beside the point, outside of the scope of tonight. When a person becomes ill, doctors would prescribe both magical formulas to be recited as well as medicinal treatments. Most magical rituals were intended to be performed by an aspu. No idea if I'm saying it right, but that is the practitioner, an expert in the magical arts. So that is what the practitioners of magical arts would be called. Asipu, something along those lines. The profession was generally passed down from generation to generation and was held in extremely high regard and often served as advisors to kings and great leaders. And that brings you into some of the discussions of witches, right? And not so much the types of witches that we talked about last week, where really it's just a bunch of young adult women, primarily. There were men in there too, but primarily women, young adult women on social media who are putting salt in a circle on a mirror and putting things inside of little jars and then pouring candle wax over the little jars and then saying that it's protection. More in the realistic sense of people who have some extra connection or more tangible connection to the other realm. And this idea that it's a generational thing. So, you know, whether you call it a genetic thing, maybe not. Maybe it's a, what would you call it? Maybe spiritual genetics that get passed down from person to person. Or if these types of practices are something that somebody really can just learn, where it's something we all have the spiritual capacity for it. Or whether it is something that only certain people have the spiritual capacity for. If you look through the ancient world, it seemed more like those people, they at least thought it was, and therefore history reflects it, that it was more of a generational thing. So the parents would pass it down to the kids would pass it down to the next generation. And like I said, they were people who ended up surrounding around kings and big time leaders, people who were very important. And Asipu, practitioner, probably served not only as a magician, and not the kind with the stick and the bunny rabbit, a magic magician, a real one, not a sleight of hand, but also as a physician, a priest, a scribe, and also many times a scholar. Okay, and then we're going to come back to this. So this is a lot of information. The Mesopotamian angle is something I definitely wanted to hit. You can also go into the Egyptian side of it, which I know Kat would like to hear. But beyond that, we can dig more into spells, Judea, which is obviously very much related to Christianity, the Greco-Roman world as well. It really just goes on. And then you can get into the Middle Ages. So there's a lot to this. Tonight, I need to be off fairly promptly at 7, so we're not going to go super deep. But I'm going to save all this. I'm going to keep it, and so we can come back to it another time. I think, honestly, Egypt alone, in terms of this kind of topic, can be an hour. The Greco-Roman world could be an hour. The medieval ages could be an hour. So I'll just add them all as individual kind of studies to the list that you guys vote on, and then we can come back to it. But I want to move on to the Hebrew word study on sorcery, because I thought this was really interesting. It's relatively short, so we'll breeze through it pretty quick. But first, I will look and see if I missed anything. I'm such a gem. Why? What did I say? That's the problem with the YouTube lag. And also that I don't look at the chat. I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. Kat, is your mother coming? She's not here yet. Mystic made it. All right, if anybody wants to come on and talk, I will open the voice chat. There you go. So you just got to let me know that you're in there, because it's muted through the stream until somebody comes on. And also you let me know in the YouTube chat. All right, let me burn through this word study, and then the only other thing that I definitely want to get through is this Jewish Encyclopedia's description of witchcraft, because I thought it was pretty interesting. And then they go into drugs and charms as well within that context, ordeals and lots, and the relation to ancestor worship, which is really interesting, because again, it's, at least in the ancient world, it seemed to be something that they at the very least believed was passed down, but they functioned as societies based off of that. So whether that was real or not, that's the way it came across. Yeah, good point, Rodriguez. Pharaoh's men copying Moses' miracles. Yeah, Egypt is really interesting. Egypt's relation to Christianity is really interesting. If you haven't dug into that, like the parallels between some of their stories and the stories in Christianity are interesting, and they're not for the faint of faith, because the parallels are pretty heavy. All right, word study. Uh-oh. Hold on, bear with me. Oh no. Hold on, guys. Hold on. TikTok just crashed. Okay, Hebrew word study on sorcery. So you've got Exodus 7:11 through 12 says, and ironically, Rodriguez was on this. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Exodus 22:18, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Now I'm going to butcher the enunciation of many of the things in here, so bear with me. We tend to lump all these as mystical practices into one pile. We mix the words sorcerer and witches up as if they were the same thing, which they are not. Exodus 22:18 often uses the English word witch in saying we must not suffer a witch to live, but it is really the word kashaf, or sorcerer. The Bible condemns magic, magicians, enchanters, mediums, astrologers, witches, wizards, and sorcerers. These are all different practices that the Bible calls an abomination. They all invoke the spirit world, specifically evil or demonic spirits. All these Hebrew words for their practices have English equivalents, which are very close to the original. I would push on that a little bit, and not in a literal sense, because that's true. I would push on it in a cultural sense, because the way we view some of these words, like spells, magic, sorcery, witches, wizards, things like that. I don't think that's true at this point. So I'm going to read it again, and then you guys can tell me whether you agree or disagree. All these Hebrew words for things like magicians, enchanters, mediums, astrologers, witches, wizards, sorcerers, all of these words have English equivalents, which are very close to the original. I don't personally think that's true anymore. I think maybe, honestly, I don't think that's been true for a very long time. I think specifically due to Hollywood, just the invention of the television and entertainment, we've turned these words, even things like mediums, into things that come across as very silly. They come across as kind of Halloween-y. They're seasonal, almost. We have a very bastardized view, in my opinion. So I think viewing them like that, literal, or as if the original is that close, I think is kind of risky. And that's at risk of keeping your perception kind of off and viewing them as silly things. I think these things, when thought about in a literal sense, in a realistic sense, I think they're things that are very scary. And if they don't invoke some kind of fear or discomfort in you, then I think you are holding on to, subconsciously, the Hollywood version of them. That's my opinion. You could totally disagree. All except one, kashifa, in the Hebrew, we render that as sorcerer. Sorcerers were the scientists of their day. You look up sorcery in your English dictionary, and you are told it means the art and practice of casting spells on people or things. It is often called black magic or witchery. That is our modern definition of kashaf, or sorcery. Yet the word kashaf is not so well defined in our lexicons. They just simply say it means sorcery, but it is really our modern idea of sorcery. Sorcerers changed things, so they took on a new appearance. In fact, tracing the word to its Middle Egyptian origins, we find it has the idea of deception through the change in imagery or appearance. The classic example of the work of sorcerer is found in Exodus 7, where the magicians threw down their rods and they turned into what? Into snakes. The magicians worked hand in hand with the sorcerers. The magicians were the front men, and the sorcerers were the ones working behind the scenes. It was really the enchantments of the sorcerers who changed the rod into the snakes. Sorcerers in the Greek is the word. I'm going to leave that one to you guys. What is the Greek word that we attribute sorcery to? What's the Greek word? I'll give you a couple of guesses because I know there's a lag on YouTube. Pfizer, Moderna, the opioid epidemic, fentanyl. I'm saying all the words that get me banned on YouTube because I'm very smart. I'm a very smart guy. Very smart guy. Come on, somebody's got to have it, and I know the YouTube lag has caught up by now. What is the word? Sorcerers is the English word in the New Testament specifically that we use for the Greek word. Pharmakia. Thank you, Danny. Thank you. Pharmakia, where we get the word pharmacy from. When our scientists use genetic engineering on various drugs to mass produce them, it is called farming. But in the Bible, we render it as sorcery. It is called that because in the very root, it means to alter or change the essence of something. This is the root meaning of the word kasha, to alter or change the very essence of a plant, animal, or person. Remembering that kasha is sorcerer. It is sorcerer. These sorcerers were actually in the business of using satanic or supernatural powers to alter God's creation, which was profoundly forbidden by God. To alter the very essence of a plant, animal, or person to be something very different means you have to go to the very genetic makeup and alter the genes. We call that today genetic modification. I really want to bring up Alex Jones, but I'm not going to. I've already said all the words to get demonetized. Could the ancient Egyptians have been involved with genetic modification? Oh, Cat, I'm trying so hard. I'm trying so hard to just jump over all of the rabbit holes. Look how much our medical science has advanced in just 100 years. They were still bloodletting 100 years ago. If you don't know what bloodletting is, Google it. We still know very little of the practice of these sorcerers. Could they have developed genetic modification over 1,000 years? We did it in 100 years. We did it 100 years ago. Excuse me. Shannon, good to see you. Egypt existed much longer. Hi, Kip. Egypt existed much longer than that. I don't know. It is a wild thought, though. Trying real hard, man. So many rabbit holes with this crap. Well, one thing I will say, man, is if you've never looked into, I mean, go message Kat if you want to know about ancient civilization stuff. I knew enough. I did not know the half of it, though. In all transparency, she has opened up my world in that end to a degree that has changed my perspective on a lot of things. Like a lot of things. Significant, kind of earth-shattering things. But if you have not looked into ancient civilizations and lost technology and things in that genre, I would highly urge you to do that. And we will definitely get into it on one of these Thursday streams or perhaps a Saturday stream. We'll see. But I need to learn more, is why we haven't done it yet. But once I feel I've adequately gotten a grip of it, it will blow your freaking mind. It's wild. Anyways, continuing. The Bible, however, declares that a kashaf, which again is sorcerer, one who alters the very essence of life, should not be allowed to live. So that is a death sentence. Am I saying it is wrong to eat seedless grapes, seedless watermelon, or any other GMO product? Should we purchase only organic foods? I would say organic foods are not even organic. It is a lie. But moving on. That is not what I'm saying, because I cannot say for sure that we can apply the word genetic modification to kashaf. There is still so much to explore, although I wonder what will happen when only giant corporations can supply seeds, which if you don't know, we are basically already there. We're pretty much already there. They have all the rights, they have all the patents, and they have all the backstock. I have met many Christians, the author says, who feel something in their spirit is not right about genetically modified food and will stay away from them. I kind of giggle at that because good luck. I am not a student of prophecy, the author says, but I can see how the Antichrist will be able to control the food of the world if he controls the giant corporations that produce the GMO seeds. Are you freaking kidding me? As if that's not already a thing. Let's be real. Let's not be children. It is possible to say that the production of our world food supply through GMOs and our supply of drugs through farming or genetic modification is really kashaf or sorcery. The author says, I cannot say for sure. That is probably quite a jump. I disagree. Anyways, I need to stop here so I can find my tin hat. Where did I put that? I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think any of that's far-fetched, though. I mean, if you know anything about the issues with food supply, you would know that that's already a thing. The seeds are totally owned, and virtually everything you eat is genetically modified to some degree or another. And there are definitely varying degrees. There are some that are much more alarming than others, so not everything is doom and gloom. But I can tell you bananas were not the way they are now. I can tell you apples hundreds of years ago were not the way they are now. And good luck getting an old one. They don't exist. Good luck. The food that we have now is nothing like it was initially. Like it was, in biblical times or I mean, even for hundreds of years later. Food now is almost entirely either genetically modified or fully synthetic. Or not fully, but I mean, some stuff is absolutely fully synthetic, but other things are partially synthetic. Synthetic meaning garbage, meaning made in a lab, not made in the ground. Then to move on to even things that are organic, quote unquote. Well, they're used with pesticides still. There are just legal loopholes to what kinds of pesticides can you use and then still say that they're pesticide free. Then you have to get into soil. Okay, soil is also genetically modified. Soil is also not natural. So good luck eating anything that is not just absolute garbage. I find it very ignorant and naive to think that you can eat organic and that you're avoiding GMO and that you're avoiding totally altered substances. It's very silly. It's very, very silly. All right. Does anybody want to come on and talk? Otherwise, I'm going to start into the Jewish Encyclopedia of the Witchcraft. But if anybody would like to come on, now would be a good time. Dr. Fauci is a wizard. Dr. Fauci is an asshole. Sorry. Sorry, but not sorry. POS. Pastora. Oh, Goddess Lily. She made it. She made it. The frog. Bro, fuck, I love you. Oh my God. Graham Hancock deep dive. Yeah. Dude, we had him on last night and it was just wild. It was just wild. But the more I listen to it, man, the more I'm like, that makes so much sense. It makes so much more sense than the bullshit stories we were taught in school and that like mainstream America believes. It makes so much more sense. It's the whole Occam's razor thing, man. The final form of this podcast is when Kat gets on and drops them conspiracy. Yeah, 100%. Well, we talked about it. As soon as there's enough, man, Kat's gonna run her own thing here. It would help me a lot, and she knows so much more than I do about a lot of the conspiracy stuff. It's not my bag. Yes, encourage Kat. Encourage her. All right, I'm gonna go into witchcraft. Somebody get it together and get in the freaking audio channel. Okay? Okay. Love you guys. Love you guys. Witchcraft and sorcery are the terms used in the Bible to designate the practice, which they spell incorrectly, so that's kind of alarming in the Jewish Encyclopedia, of the arts of divination, which were tabooed by Orthodox religious sentiment. As this Orthodox sentiment was not a constant quantity, practices which at one time were regarded as innocent, at another were relegated to the domain of sorcery or witchcraft. These practices were varied and are denoted by several different Hebrew words. And actually, we're going to skip right down to drugs and charms. Mind-boggling. Thing is that our body, its processes is so damn perfect, and we're eating all this, and most of us are still alive. Yeah, but are we fully alive? Are we? Are we as we should be? Or have we been dulled and modified into something not quite right? That would be my question. Because I think we have been. I think over the years, we have been intentionally poisoned, basically, to be, this is already becoming a freaking conspiracy show, to be easier controlled, I think, more than anything else. But I think also in some manner, I don't know how, but I think in some manner, yes, Kat, I'm going there. In some manner, I think we have been dulled spiritually, which would align with my theory about why basically everything that has to do with spirituality has been pulled out of the Bible that Christians pretend is inerrant. Oh, it's perfect. It's untouched. We've never altered it, except for all the times we altered it, except for those, right? Except for the hundreds of things we altered in the Bible, right? Yeah, besides those things, it's unaltered, 100%. Okay, drugs and charms. An obscure class of soothsayers, love that word, was called, oh God, kill me. All right, I'm gonna put this word in the chat. Anybody who knows how to pronounce this, I will send you a cookie in the mail. Makashefim. Makashefim. That's my guess. Makashefim. Argues that the root kashif means to use magical appliances or drugs, and many interpreters follow this individual. Those who doubt the correctness of the explanation are unable to suggest an alternative. This interpretation receives some support from the facts that the Septuagint is na, and that the belief in the use of drugs or herbs is very old, as is shown by the mentions of mandrakes in Genesis. And the oldest code capital punishment is ordained for the class of sorcerers. Some of this we've actually already covered, so I think we're going to skip this. Yeah, most of this we already covered, and then some of it was take us down a totally different route. So here's the deal. Somebody can either come on here, or I can read about spells, or we can go into Egypt a little bit. So I'm gonna do this. We're gonna go Egypt. If I can spell. Got it. Spells or Greco-Roman. How about that? Those are three good ones. All right, hit the poll. Hit the poll. Next parts to jump into. Egypt, spells, or Greco-Roman. Ooh, there it goes. Thing is, God still speaks through scripture regardless of what garbage we've done to it. That's got to stand for something. 100%. Absolutely. I just have an issue with, and I mean, I'm sure you guys know by now, I just have an issue with lying to myself. I just can't do that. I can't do it. If people take comfort in believing the Bible is perfect and that it's never been altered, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with it when you start teaching that to people because it's a lie. It's just not true. But I would never say that the Bible is like garbage or that it's not valuable. I think it's still the most valuable collection of texts on this planet. I'm just not going to pretend like it's not been altered. It's been wildly altered. Without a single doubt. It's been wildly altered. All right, Egypt is winning, so we're just going to go into Egypt. In ancient Egypt, Kemet, in the Egyptian language, magic, personified as the god Heka, was an integral part of religion and culture, which is known to us through a substantial corpus of texts, which are products of the Egyptian tradition. While the category magic has been contentious for modern Egyptology, there is a clear support for its applicability from ancient terminology. The Coptic term Hek is the descendant of the Pharaonic term Heka, which, unlike its Coptic counterpart, has no connotation of impiety or illegality, and is attested from the Old Kingdom through to the Roman era. Heka was considered morally neutral and was applied to the practices and beliefs of both foreigners and Egyptians alike. So there's one vast difference right there. Within Egyptian culture, magic, or Heka, was considered neutral morally. Within a Jewish culture, and within even some pagan cultures, but only very few, magic was considered to be negative. It was a negative interaction with normally evil spirits or demons or something of that nature, but it was negative. So within Egyptian culture in general, magic or Heka was neutral. It was a neutral thing. The instructions for Maraker inform us that Heka was a beneficence gifted by the Creator to humanity in order to be weapons to ward off the blow of events. Magic was practiced by both the literal priestly hierarchy and by illiterate farmers and herdsmen. And the principle of Heka underlay all ritual activity, both in the temples and in private settings. The main principle of Heka, or magic, is centered on the power of words to bring things into being. It's another difference. In other cultures around the same time, magic was more of a tangible thing. Like we saw last week, there were jars, and there's salt, and there's what I think are basil leaves, but probably weren't. And they were putting things on the doorways and using crystals, and there's a lot of tangible stuff. And like Tatiana talked about last week too, it was physical stuff. Stuff has energy. Tapping into the stuff. We want the stuff energy. Well, in Egyptian culture, it was, at least again in part, it was different. Theirs was largely vocal. It was a lot of words have power type relations to magic. Karenga explains the pivotal power of words and their vital ontological role as the primary tool used by the creator to bring the manifest world into being. There's a parallel with Christianity that mimics the creation story. God breathed or spoke creation into being. Whether you believe that is literal or whether you believe Genesis is more of an illustration, either way, it's the principle. It's the idea that words have power. So they believe that magic was used by the creator to bring the manifest world into being. Because humans were understood to share a divine nature with the gods or the images of God, there's a parallel to Christianity. The same power to use words creatively that the gods have is shared by humans. The use of amulets, there's a physical item, was widespread among both living and dead ancient Egyptians. I feel like most Americans know this from at least Hollywood, that amulets were a big deal in Egyptian culture. They were used for protection and as means of reaffirming the fundamental fairness of the universe. I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was interesting verbiage, right? And that's pulled from Religion and Ritual in Ancient Egypt. It's a press from Cambridge University. But it's that these amulets were used for protection as a means of, quote, reaffirming the fundamental fairness of the universe. Super interesting way to word it. Someone put it right there. Assuming attention is energy. Oh, what did I miss? I'm going to throw headphones on. And then the Discord will at least go into my ears. So if anybody decides to come on, I can hear you, and then I'll unmute you once I know you're there. The oldest amulets found are from the pre-dynastic Badarian period. Honestly, I'm unfamiliar with that. And they persisted through to Roman times. The Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is really interesting. I'll leave a link to a quick Wikipedia page. Let me pull that up for you guys. If you have not looked into the Book of the Dead, it's another thing I would really, really recommend. It won't take too long to read. Wikipedia stuff is short. But check this out if you never have. Boom. There you go. Very interesting stuff. So the Book of the Dead were a series of texts written in ancient Egypt with various spells to help guide the Egyptians into the afterlife. The interior walls of the Pyramid of Unas, the final pharaoh of the Egyptians' 5th dynasty, was covered in hundreds of magical spells and inscriptions, running from floor to ceiling in vertical columns. These inscriptions are known as the pyramid texts, and they contain spells needed by the pharaoh in order to survive in the afterlife. That's the other thing. Egyptians, again, primarily, believe that once you died, you basically started a new adventure. It's like you got to a new level in a video game. And everything shifts, but they believed culturally that they needed to prepare their dead for the next adventure. So they would put things like in with when they would bury them or when they would send them off, they would put things with them that they thought would help them in the afterlife. So they believe some of these spells were needed by the pharaoh in order to survive when he moved on to the afterlife. The Miraban texts were strictly for royalty only. So those specifically for pharaoh. These spells were kept secret from commoners and were written only inside royal tombs. During the chaos and unrest of the first intermediate period, however, tomb robbers broke into the pyramids and saw the magical inscriptions. Commoners began learning the spells, and by the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, commoners began inscribing similar writings on the sides of their own coffins, hoping that doing so would ensure their own survival in the afterlife. These writings are known as the coffin texts. As a person died, his or her corpse would be mummified and wrapped in linen bandages to ensure that the deceased body would survive for as long as possible, because the Egyptians believed that a person's soul could only survive in the afterlife for as long as his or her physical body survived here on Earth. The last ceremony before a person's body was sealed away inside the tomb was known as the opening of the mouth. In this ritual, the priest would touch various magical instruments to various parts of the deceased body, therefore thereby giving the deceased the ability to see, hear, taste, and smell in the afterlife. I agree. They saw coffins as a sort of vestibule. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Dude, Egyptian culture in general, I think, they were the most interesting people ever. Until last night, then I hear about like the Amazonian people were like wildly advanced and had all these cities and stuff. And it was like, had no idea, man. The Amazon had it going on. I did not even know. All right. Does anybody have anything before? Oh, Rodriguez and Ghost. I see y'all here. You guys want to jump in? Otherwise, we got spells. We got some spell action going on. South America.
Out, but I've just been, enthralled in your reading.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I wish I could have got more. Crunk or
But yeah, since you said you wanted to leave early, I would just kind of prefer you to keep going.
All right, Rodriguez, did you have something or are you good? I see you in there.
Elise. No, I just have a lot of questions and more so like what's considered not okay versus natural healings that, God would approve, I guess. I know that Mystique had messaged me in the chat a few months ago about it, but yeah, just in general, it's a little uncomfortable when I go and buy certain essential oils for certain things and, I see witches doing the same thing. So, just stuff like that.
Are you doing what the witches are doing though?
It's the hell if I know. I mean,
well, what are you using them for? I guess would be like the first question. What's the purpose?
I'm desperately in need of healing.
Like physical ailments, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I think we all do it for. But I mean, I've done everything. Like I've even tried doing like what's it called? Like the sound frequencies. What is it? Like the 528HZ and I forget the other ones. But I do know there's certain sound frequencies that are supposed to help like I guess enhance certain spiritual entities, which I don't want to dabble in the wrong shit, Yeah,
and I think that can be risky, man. I use frequency music and frequency sounds like for work, but I
like
don't
binaural beats or whatever it's called.
Kind of, yeah. So I like when yeah, but it's never in a spiritual sense. So I guess that's what separates that. So to me, I guess that would be like a fundamental difference would be if I was trying to use things like this to tap into like the other realm. I think that's, and I'm not saying it's bad because I don't know, but I would say that's risky behavior, and that's totally an opinion.
It is in a spiritual way. I mean, technically, it's not like it's literally putting a Band-Aid on your body, right? You're trying to tap into some other unseen realm for healing, right?
Well, you might be. What I'm saying is like personally, I'm not. I use it because they help me concentrate. So I do certain things for work where I need to be like super concentrated. There's a lot on the line. It's my focus or bust. So I use things like that just to focus. In no way is my intention like, you know, spiritual world, give me this or give me. It's like, no, it calms my brain or it helps keep thoughts out of my head. So my intentions are very different. But at the same time, I don't think necessarily it's bad if you're trying to use something to do that. I just think it's risky, and that could go either way. I don't know. That's one of those things, though, man. Like,
Yeah.
you ask 100 people, you're gonna get 100 different answers, and if you ask 100 Christians, you're gonna have them all tell you you're satanic.
Yeah, I know they are. Yeah, my mom's one of them. But
I'm
like,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, and then it goes into other things, you know, like stones and crystals, and it's like, well, technically, the Jewish priests wore, what is it, the 12 stones for each tribe, and it's my understanding it was kind of supernatural, you know. And then you also think when you get X-rays and they put like the, what is it, the lead over you, is that like a form of it? You know what I mean? There's just so. It just taps into so many various areas where you're just kind of, I don't know, left in the dark and not too sure what to do, what not to do.
Yeah. I think there'd be a couple questions you kind of have to ask yourself. Would be, biblically, some of that stuff was a thing, right? Like there were oils, and I think we talked about it last week too. I think Danny actually threw one out that I did not think of, was like the wise men. They brought frankincense and myrrh, and you know, but because I was saying last week and I was wrong, and so Danny set me straight. It was like from Old Testament to New Testament, you don't really see a lot of crossover. You see some. So like with the wise men, that's some crossover, but it's very, very little. And then if you read through like any of basically from when the way started, when Christianity as a movement began, there was. And again, somebody can totally fact check me if I'm wrong, but from memory, there's nothing. So gospel wise, you have a little bit. Beyond the gospel, you have absolutely zero. From what, and totally correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody throw it out and I'll correct myself next week. But from my understanding, there's nothing. So there's not that much crossover. So then the question would be like, why did Jews do it? Why did Christians not do it? The next question would be, what is different between Christians and Jews? Well, quite a bit, right? Like a lot changed. What did Jews also do that Christians don't do? Killed animals as a sacrifice. Like if you were to do like a chart with Jews did it, Christians didn't do it, there's going to be a lot, like a shit ton. There was a lot of stuff that the Jewish culture and Jewish religion did that Christians did not keep going with. And then it becomes a why. Was it for a reason? And maybe the oils and maybe the incense and maybe things like that, maybe there's a reason that it didn't cross over. Because it seemed like some of that was sanctioned by God. And not it seems like, it absolutely was sanctioned by God.
No, yeah. And I totally agree. I think someone put up on the chat like to pray. I mean, yeah, I do that, obviously. I think a lot of us do. But if we're realistic, it doesn't come often. So I guess that's kind of why I'm trying to delve in deeper. You know, obviously things were happening, you know, during biblical times, and like that fruit is just not here today. It's just not. You can say faith or whatever you want, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So,
and even then, like, again, New Testament, it was gone for the most part. It was gone. So it's not even like a today thing. I don't think, and it's totally an opinion, but I think it was just something and remembering too, a factor of this that a lot of people forget, between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there was a shit ton of time. It wasn't like this, then that. Years. Yeah, it was a long time. So like a lot of stuff happened that, you know, we have some other texts and things, but nothing that gives you anything you could ever call a clear picture. So it's trying to like figure out what the difference was. But I always go back to, because I think saying anything other than this, I think is dangerous, is like, why are you doing it? What are your intentions? And what is your conviction with it? And all of that, I think you should only ask yourself if you feel like super secure in yourself spiritually, I would never mess with any of that shit if I was in like a rough spiritual spot, because I think that is absolutely playing with fire. 100%.
You wouldn't do
anything.
Which part?
Any of it. Anything
No
that.
crystals. No.
No, hell no. Hell no. Right now, I have no issue with it. None. And I am looking at some of it. Personally, I don't feel I need any of it. But I'm interested. I'm interested. And Kat grew up around a lot of it. Tatiana, she was into a lot of that stuff. I don't know the depth of it or anything, but like Kat grew up around stuff, so it interests me more than ever when her and I got together. But I'm interested to know like why people do it, because some of it really is old, and some of it, just to be totally frank, like I said last week, I think it's just total bullshit, and I think it's very silly. But some of it is so old that like, is there something to it? And then I have to think, okay, well, how does that tie to what I believe about God? Because if I begin to dive into these odd, tangible things that could be spiritual and also could be demonic, what am I going to like anchor that in? Like, could crystals have some sort of connection to God, whether it's like an energy thing or I don't know.
Quantum physics.
Sure. Yeah, sure. No, that's a good. Does it connect? Or am I literally just tapping into something that wants me to tap into it because it wants another connection to our realm? Like that's, and I've explained it like a million times, so I'm sure it's very annoying, but I truly picture the world in a very specific way. And there are evil entities or energies or whatever the hell you want to call them that are always trying to connect. And the more people allow the connections, the more saturated the world becomes with evil. And I think the same thing happens from more of like a positive energy or what you might call God end of things. And the more we connect, the more saturated and the more volume of goodness and morality and godliness there is in the world. And I think it's this constant battle of who's making how many connections and what is the volume of evil to good. And I think it's, go ahead.
Okay. And I get that, but is there do you believe in any like neutral stuff? So like, yeah, there's a crystal, but the enemy could use it for bad. And then God could also use it for good. Same thing with music or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, there's gotta be.
What does that say about God though, theologically?
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, every TV and cell phone uses crystal technology. You can watch garbage or you can watch something that's going to feed your soul.
For sure.
Both through crystals. So it's like I think it's just a neutral technology, so to speak, that can be used in any way.
I think most of it is. That's why the whole like condition of the heart, intentions, why? I think that answers most of those questions. But Rodriguez, theologically, if God needs a crystal for anything, you would have to seriously reconsider what you believe about God. If God needs a little chunk of earth to get anything done, it means that he is inadequate in some way without the crystal, right? So like theologically, why else would he need it?
Mud? Didn't he use mud for the blind?
Oh, hold on. Didn't he use mud for the blind? Jesus?
Yeah.
Did he have to? That's the question.
The point is but he did.
Sure.
Or, yeah, so that's...
And I'm not saying anything against it, but even with that,
right?
Did he have to? And I think the way you answer that question, one way or another, it's theologically relevant. Why did Jesus have to do that? Or maybe he didn't.
I don't think he had to.
Maybe it was a way of illustrating. Like that's the problem with the Bible is like half the shit in here is an illustration. Half of it is trying to explain something. I don't know whether he needed to or not. Theologically, I don't think he did. Because theologically, that would destroy my view of God. What I believe about God. What God is specifically and like what he's capable of. But if he needed it, I'd have to completely rework who God is.
Can I give an idea about that?
Yeah,
demonstrated.
Oh,
yeah.
So I think he did that because he was not doing it for the blind man. He was doing it for the audience that was watching I think he's like, hey guys, remember how the Torah says that God made man of clay? So I'm gonna wink, wink, nod, nod, take some of this clay here and cure this guy's eyes with it. I think it was a callback, but that's just my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
Would make perfect sense.
That's one example, right? Because there's someone else where they were told to dip in the dirty river 7 times, for their healing of leprosy. Someone else had to just go away for a bit. I mean, there's
a lot of inconsistency.
Different elements.
I think if you watch the Messiah 2030 documentary, it'll answer that dipping in the Jordan 7 times question. But
I want to ask all of you.
Go ahead.
Why are you putting God in a box?
Yeah.
Why is there a belief that God can only use certain things or not use certain things, and he's only powerful with or without certain things?
Well, that's my point.
We don't know.
Yeah.
You have to rethink your vision of God now, because for you thinking that he needs to use a little bit of earth or a crystal, that doesn't mean that he's powerful enough.
Exactly.
But what do we know? What do we actually know what God is capable of, other than what's told to us in those illustrations in the Bible?
Yeah. No, exactly.
We're limiting God by saying, oh, he doesn't need any help. I think this is the kind of mentality that does limit God to suit us and our limited knowledge and understanding of what God is and what he can do for us, to us, on our behalf, or for whoever else.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be messing with his sovereignty and what he does or doesn't do. Yeah, but I guess, okay, so let's just say, so I'm sick, right? And then there's an occultist who's sick with the same thing, and we're both using healing herbs and oils. So what then? We're both going for the same motive, right? Healing.
But so then that brings in a new question. Healing through what? Through what means? Because I'll give you a super Hollywood example because it'll be easy to picture. There are occultists who, when I was young, I actually got to sit in the room and watch some of these practices because of who I was when I was younger. I've seen them do these rituals. It's bizarre. It's very odd. But why do they do it? They do it to connect with evil deities or evil energies or Satan or whatever the hell you want to say. They do it to connect with the spiritual realm in an evil fashion. Sometimes for something like you're saying, like healing. There are also Christians who will sit in a church and hold hands or not and chant and pray, and it's no different. Different rituals, different intentions, drawing on a different entity. So,
but mirroring the same thing physically.
Mirroring,
so if it's
very similar. Yeah.
Then why wouldn't it mirror spiritual?
It is the intention. I have known some people who call themselves, they believe in Satan, and they would call on benevolent whatever creatures to help healing. But I also know my great-great-grandmother, an old believer of God. I mean, we're talking about religious, beyond religious, who used prayers to heal people. They would bring people to her from other villages so she can whisper prayers to them to heal them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all the intent, which is why it always, to me, it brings back to the frequency and the energy. Doesn't matter what we call it. We call it what we understand. If, somebody believes in Satan and they believe that, that's the energy that's going to help them, we're all tuning in into the same intent, to heal. But we're using different names for it.
Yeah. I mean, at a very baseline level. Yeah. I think it's mostly intentions. The further question is like, regardless of your intentions, are there things you could engage with tangibly, or even vocally, or perhaps even in your head reciting? Are there things like that you can do with good intentions and still tap into the wrong thing? And I personally want to say no, but I think yes.
No.
I think you can.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah. You can't. Unintentionally, and yes, there are some evil spirits or deities that can mask themselves as a good one, and when you call upon or you feel the energy, you channeling it, you're thinking that it is a good energy.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of how to protect yourself.
I guess, yeah, it just dabbles into a lot of things. Like, I don't know how many times I've seen people in more charismatic atmospheres where they're looking for a quote unquote prophetic word, and it looks no different than like fortune telling. Sorry.
Yeah. No, 100%.
No.
I agree.
And all of this brings you, unfortunately, right back to the first question. So what can you do and what can you not do? Because if there's some things that you're doing with good intentions, but still have the ability to tap into the wrong shit, that's problematic. And I think it's really hard to know. I mean, I think it's almost impossible to know. And
it is possible. Trust your intuition.
That's what I was going to say. Conviction.
Those, it's not just a conviction. Pay attention to the signs. Be aware. It's down to, it's not just a big uneasy feeling or the hair standing up on the back of your, neck or something like that. When you start questioning some tiny little questions, then maybe you should step away. But there are always signs. We just don't pay attention.
Yeah. That's why I think being spiritually grounded is like number one. And if you're in any place where you feel you're not 100% as grounded as you ever have been, I think I wouldn't play with things. If you are, though, like I personally feel like I am, then I feel comfortable personally. It's not advice to anybody but me. I feel comfortable personally exploring some of these things. If I at any point feel, which has happened, feel like something is wrong or something is off or something is just not quite right. Like I'm getting something that I'm not intending to get, and it doesn't feel right. Then I'd immediately cut it off. And then I'd try to reflect on it. That's what the other thing too is I'd have people around you to kind of keep you straight, because I think you are to a degree playing with fire. And I think you can go down these rabbit holes, and then in 6 months, you'll be one of these ladies on Witch Talk or one of these guys on Witch Talk. I think it's like a very slippery slope. And I think unless you feel it's very necessary or you feel convicted to do so, like in your case, it's health, and like you really need help. So in that case, like I get it. I totally get it. So I think if you really need it and think it's necessary, or if you can feel convicted toward it, which is kind of my thing, I feel convicted to understand more about it, then I think cool. But like have a backstop, have people around you that are aware that you're doing it, so that if they see you start to kind of shift in the wrong direction, they can pull you aside and be like, hey, get your shit together. You're acting weird. You're saying weird things. You're doing things a little bit too far. And then just staying like very conscious of yourself. I think if you're going to do that and like take it seriously, I think like journaling would be a smart thing, or taking notes of how you felt before you started, how you felt during, how you felt after, what's your perspective on the concept in and of itself. Like if you're using these oils or doing incense with some specific intention, like logging all of it and seeing if you see any changes over time in a direction that you're not intending to go, and then being able to kind of nip that like real quick. I don't know, like, it's tough. Go, what's up, Ghost?
There's also something that people need to watch out for. A lot of people that delve into magical world is because they're desperate, whether they're desperate to find love, to make money, or to get better health.
Yeah.
And that's what it opens up the door to a lot of benevolent beings.
Yeah.
Desperation.
So for spiritual manipulation.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very manipulative.
Yes. I mean, what would a demonic entity, who would they target? Somebody who's vulnerable, right? Like people who are very strong are not going to be the first target. It's going to be people who are vulnerable. Ghost, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask you, like, if you could give some examples of what you think might be skating the edge or, like, you know, playing with fire. If you
I have
feel
an
comfortable.
example.
Yeah,
I want to hear it.
yeah, go ahead.
So when I was talking about like the sound frequencies, it was like this thing where YouTube was just kind of looping, you know, and I was laying down, just kind of curled up and not feeling well. And I didn't realize that it went into like the next track, you know, of the next, you know, musical sound or whatever. And I know it's a graphic description, but it's the best way I could explain it is whatever sound frequency it played, it felt like my ears were being raped. As crazy as that sounds, like I immediately got up and I was like, whoa. And I realized I was like 15 seconds into this, whatever, a different sound frequency.
Interesting.
And I like turned it off and I was like, ugh. And then I didn't, you know, do it again for a minute. But yeah, I mean, that didn't.
What was
Actually,
it?
that's the only time.
Yeah.
Huh?
What was the frequency? Do you know?
No, I don't remember. And I'm in the middle of moving, so all my stuff is packed up. So if I notated it, I don't have it on me.
Do you feel?
I think I may have.
Go ahead.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
I think I may have taken a screenshot at one point.
If you find it, send it. I'd be curious to kind of see, because that's the type of thing that like I'm toying with.
Right.
But
yeah, same here. I try to stay in the safe area of like, I think it's 432 and 528, and I just like don't do that. I've even tried to look into the sound frequencies with scriptures
yeah,
in it, and that's one too that I found. I guess my whole thing is I don't agree with a lot of Christianity blacklisting and demonizing everything. I think there's something wrong there. And I think it's fear-based, and I just don't think it's of God, point blank. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of things that were lost that probably weren't supposed to be, you know, which may be why we're in the state we're in. And yeah, I understand there's stuff in our food, you know, and that's probably like a huge factor for sure. Like I had said before, I'd done like a 40-day fast.
Wow.
Yeah, and I will say I had more mental clarity.
Oh, for sure.
And more energy, but there wasn't too much of a difference physically. I mean, I ended up going to the ER twice during that time. So
yeah, you got to be real careful with stuff like that, especially after, like, if you don't ease into it. If you just start like
no, I'm a veteran. Yeah, sorry. No one should ever do that. Like that took like maybe 3 years to get to that point. You know, you start off with like 1 day, 3 day, 5 day, 10, 21, and yeah.
So I want to ask you, with the frequency that gave you yucky feelings, did you in any way feel like it was targeted, or did you feel like you just? So I guess let me put it like this: you can walk into a room and you can feel like somebody in that room literally wants to kill you very specifically. Like you as an individual are being targeted. Or you can walk into a room and just feel like it's kind of got a bad energy to it. Like it's just not great vibes, as the white teenager might say. Not great vibes.
I wouldn't say vibes. I would say literally the sound, right? So I guess the best way I could kind of describe it is like if you're listening to, or you're watching TV, right? And all of a sudden the emergency broadcast, and you're like, you know, let me turn that off or hurry up and mute it. Except it wasn't an annoyance feeling. It was like a...
Yeah.
But it wasn't the brown note, was it?
But did you? If you don't watch South Park, you're not gonna know what he's talking about. Did you feel like you were pulled into it, Or did you feel like you happened to wander into it? Is what I'm asking. Do you feel like you were targeted, or do you feel like you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it was just an icky feeling, kind of like, ugh, get this off of me, you know, turn it off, pray,
Yeah.
I don't know, listen to some worship to get rid of. I don't know. But like I said, that's the best way I could describe it. Like, my ears were raped. I don't know. Like, it was that feeling of ugh and violation. I don't know. It was weird, really weird. I didn't even think it was possible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's how a lot of stuff is, right? You think a lot of it is bogus until something happens.
Oh man, I was the biggest skeptic. I was the biggest shit talker ever of stuff like that until I started to very slowly experience it. And now I am very apologetic and very empathetic to things like that. Because it's real, man.
Yeah. You didn't live with us in that one house that after Kat told you about. You would have been a big believer right away.
Which one? Say the name and I'll know what you're talking about.
It was the Legion Street.
Yep. Yeah. Sometime we got to get Kat on here. Well, one of these days we'll have to do ghost stories again, because we've done that a couple times. And when I say ghost stories, I mean like proposed demonic interactions. And that was pretty good. That was really interesting. Sarah had a couple pretty good stories, and then I had an interesting thing happen a couple months ago. But yeah, it's wild stuff, man. And a lot of it it's hard to believe until it happens to you. And I feel like a lot of people who believe it prior to it happening, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a cynic. I feel like a lot of people don't really believe it though. They just want to. What's that?
That's necessary. Even if you believe it, you don't always recognize it for what it is. Whether it's a good experience with a spirit or a demonic presence. You know, I was a believer with different things. And when I saw ghosts of my dad, I didn't recognize it until hours later that I saw my dad who passed away.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too that'll be interesting is I didn't have a fur baby at the time, so I wasn't a parent. But I do know, our pets for sure kind of sense things. So maybe I'll have to kind of rely on my fur baby, because I remember there was this one time where I feel like I keep talking, but there was this one time where I was on the couch and I was just really discouraged about everything with my family, health, everything. And I was just like so down, and I was like crying and crying and crying. And my dog was right there next to me, but he was just all of a sudden started barking like at the wall where I was sitting. And I firmly believe like, oh shit, this is probably like some, attack or something. And, that kind of helped pull me out of it, because then I just prayed against it, so.
Yeah. I think the animal thing would be something interesting to talk about too at some point.
Right.
Kat and I have been talking about it a lot this week. We had to put a dog down this week, so it's been a very emotional week. Yeah, man, it's been tough. It's been tough. So, but anyways, it brought up a lot of those conversations, and I know she talked to you a bit, Ghost, too, and it's an interesting conversation if nothing else. So maybe at some point we'll delve into that a bit, because it's rough, but it's also very interesting to try to understand the different theories of what part animals play kind of in the spiritual side of reality. And what happens, after life. Been some wild conversations, but anything else, guys? I gotta start wrapping up here, and I'm also getting some errors on YouTube now, so I kind of want to beat them to the punch. We've said a lot of hot words tonight, so
hot words. Yeah. I hope y'all have a good night.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
We're bad llamas.
Bad llamas?
Yeah.
No such thing.
It's just one of those things.
Llamas are wonderful.
That's what you think.
I
Until you blow up Facebook
yeah,
with
no,
all the words you're not supposed to.
no shit. Yeah, tonight was a hot one, keyword wise. We did a great job of saying a whole bunch of shit we shouldn't say. Anyways, Ghost. Kat and I are we gotta reach out to you about something. So we're gonna do that right now after this. And then I will post the poll and I'll put this on there again. And we'll just keep putting it on until you guys are sick of this topic, because I feel like it can basically go on forever. We did not cover specifically spells. We did not cover Judea. We did not cover the Greco-Roman world, nor did we cover the Middle Ages and witchcraft in medieval Europe.
My bad. Sorry.
No, not at all. The conversation is the most important part. And I think just some of that back and forth was clarifying. If not for other people, then, I mean, it's always helpful for me to kind of listen to other people's perspectives. I live a very insulated life. So it's very interesting. And it helps me kind of understand what other people think more. And I think, like I said, like that's an impossible situation in my view, because of kind of what we talked about. Is like, no matter you ask the question you asked, Rodriguez, and then you have all these other questions, and then once you begin to answer them, you circle right the fuck back to the first question. And it's like,
sorry.
How do you? No, not at all. It's not really you specifically, but it's like it's an impossible thing to know, to figure out, because it's no matter how you answer them all, no matter what, you just end up right in the back same spot of like, is it okay or is it not? Am I still like open to the risk of tapping into something that I shouldn't be? And
I think we just need more time.
Yes.
You think so? Think we can figure it out?
Yeah. Yep.
We need
I do.
we need to have you kick off the next one then, okay?
Okay.
So get your shit together and get ready. All right. We're gonna wrap it up. I gotta get the kid fed and get her to bed. But this was good. I'll put it on again. So if you guys vote for it again, then we'll just jump right back in. Ghost will be the leader of the next one. It'll be good. Sorry, you don't have a choice. Cutting the stream off before you can say anything. Love you guys. Love you. Everybody have a